In this video, we are going to kind of do some cleanup on our homepage and also start to add some CSS to make our page look nicer. My website right now, I have this large picture, so I'm just going to start by cleaning that up. Also going to shove it over here so we can look at it while we code. So I need to make this image a little bit smaller. Maybe yours doesn't look as bad as mine, but if you need to make it smaller, we can always go to the image tag and we just use the width attribute. So in mine, the coffee shop picture is the one that's causing me problems. I'll do width and just like 200 pixels, make it real small. Go back over here and refresh. Okay, that's looking a little nicer, or at least like easier to see the whole page entirely. So this is our web page so far. Not really a web page, not any styling or anything, but it has the structure of the pieces we want. Now we need to start moving towards our templates idea. We're not going to worry about the menu just yet, but we're going to see if we can implement some of these ideas down here. The first thing we should think about is what are some properties we want to apply to everything? Not just in specific boxes or sections, but what do we want to apply to our entire website? One thing we can notice is that the majority of the website has this light blue background. So we have this kind of coloring that applies to everything that's not inside of a subsection. So we need to apply a background color. The second thing we might want is the text and images to be in the middle. So these two things are pretty unanimous. We'd say they're global style. So they apply to everything in this main section. So let's see if we can do that. I'm going to make my website smaller here. Let's go over just closing down my IDs to kind of look at what I'm working with. And now we need to think about how do I apply something to, or apply CSS to all of these elements. If you want to apply CSS to basically your entire web page, you can use the body tag. The body tag wraps all of these things, so anything you apply to body is going to apply to them. So this can be a quick way to apply some global style. Let's try it out and save this, go to my homepage, .css, and let's start writing some CSS code. So I want to apply CSS to everything on my page essentially. So we'll use the body tag. And we'll use a background color. That's one thing we talked about doing. I'll do light blue. We'll fine tune the colors later on. I'm just going to kind of get some mild coloring in there. And if you want to push most things into the center, you can use text align center. We're going to see some problems with this, but we'll deal with those later on. I'm going to save this. HTML, CSS both saved. Let's go over here. Let's give it a little refresh. Okay. Looking a little nicer. We got some of the coloring. There are some problems. You'll notice over here that we have these bullet points. They are not behaving as we'd expect. We'll deal with that or choose something else later on. Okay, so we got that general structure. If we like, for example, if you wanted a different color for your font, you could always do like color, whatever you want, brown, and then refresh it. Looking a little ugly for me, so I'm gonna keep that off. But if you want a text color, go for it. All right, so we have CSS applied to the majority of our website. Now we have to fine tune some of it. We're gonna look at this area here. And we haven't talked about all the things incorporated in this area. So far, we only have the location section and the hours section. You'll remember we made those as IDs, location, hours, and we gave them classes as well. Before we dive into the CSS here, I'm going to introduce a new concept, which is basically the idea that we can put sections, divs, inside other divs. So right now we have enough to make these green boxes, the location information and the hours. But we don't have this outer section here. We just have the location hours. So let's see if we can make that. I'm going to call this yellow section here the outer section or outer box. And I'm going to call these green ones the inner boxes. So outer being this outer area, the green ones being the inner. To start, I'm going to make a small change. For the locations and hours, I'm going to switch their class to be called inner box for both of them. I should have done this earlier, but now that we have a little bit more context, we'll put it in here. So these are going to represent the inner regions. Now we also need the outer region. To start, I'm going to make this after the intro. So our intro section is right here. This comes after the intro. So I'm going to make a div here. And we could use a class or an ID. I'm going to use a class for now, a class called outer box. And I know we only have one of these things. I know that this yellow region, we only have one on our page, but maybe we'll want more later on. So using a class makes it more flexible. We could reuse some of this code. So I have my class outer box. I'm going to expand that div tag. And now I'm going to nest these inner boxes inside the outer box. So again, the idea of nesting is we put them inside. Right now, these div tags are sequential, but I'm going to take this, I'm going to highlight all my location hours code, copy, and paste. So it's going to end up in here. We'll need to delete this later on, so I'm going to show you a different way you could do that. I'm doing Control Z here to undo what I just did. Okay, so if you want to copy and cut, you can highlight like this and do Control X or Command X. That cuts it, it deletes it, and copies it. So I'm copying and deleting it and then pasting it. This saves us a little time because then we don't have to go back and delete it. So I'm going to close these down for now just so we get a context of what we've done so far. So I've made this outer box class that is wrapping these two inside of it. So these guys are now located inside. Okay, so what was the purpose of all this? Why do we put them inside? Now we can start adding some CSS that can make the spacing look a little nicer. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And let's start working on the outer box first, this yellow region. So I probably want a light kind of beige color for the background, and we probably want some padding here. So let's try that out. The outer box is called class outer box. So to reference this, we will need to use the period to indicate to CSS that we are using a class. And let's go ahead, use that name outer box. And let's give it a background color, beige, and then padding as well. I'm going to do 25 to start. We'll see how that looks. Let's save that. HTML saved. Let's refresh. Okay. So we can kind of see a little bit of the structure. We have this region here, and we have the two smaller sections that don't have CSS, but they're inside for now. We can see it's kind of hiked up here right next to the intro and the sides. We should add some margin as well. Let's see how margin 25 looks as well. So just kind of applying that to both. Okay, gives us a little bit of space. Maybe I want a little bit more, I don't know. Maybe we could do margin 30, and then maybe we'll do a margin of 10 pixels on the top. So everywhere is going to have 30 except for the top, which will have 10. Okay. I don't like that. I'm going to do a little bit more. 50 here, 30 for the top. Okay. You can play around with this as much as you like, but now we have a little bit of space around the outside of our outer box. So again, margin's outside, padding is inside. So we have this section here set up, this outer box. And now we can work on the inner boxes. So we've done CSS for this section, the outside, and now we're going to do CSS for the inside, these inner boxes. And the reason we use classes here is because we have two subsections, the locations and the hours. But we want to apply the same thing to both of them. We want them to both be green and this kind of shape. So rather than doing it twice, we'll just use a class of innerbox and apply that CSS to both things. Let's go over here to homepage.css. Our class is called innerbox. Let's give it a background color. I'll do light green. As always, let's do light sea green. Do whatever you prefer. We'll fine tune the colors later on. Same thing, let's give it some padding. Let's give it some margin as well. In general, we always want some amount of padding margin, that otherwise we get these like really cluttered pages. Let's save it. Let's run it over here. Okay. And we can kind of start to see the structure taking place. We have the structure we were outlining in our template over here. Let me see if I can get them side by side. Okay, so that's looking a little nicer. Maybe we want to add some borders real quick to both the inner boxes and the outer boxes. Let's do border. I'll do just black for now. Black, double, 10 pixels. Maybe for the inner boxes, I'll just do red, just to make them a little different. So for the outer box, black, double, 10 pixels. Never really sure about the order, but we just need a color, a style, and the numbers. Do it for both the outer and the inner box. Let's save, and let's refresh. Okay. So maybe not the prettiest thing going on, but it's a far cry from what we had starting out. We have some sort of structure to our page, and it loosely resembles what we have over here. So in the next video, let's look at a little bit more of how we can clean up this page, make it look a little bit nicer.